Salam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rob Tawab La Atam. Za'achiakam Yawaman Chagadar Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawam from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam Kaya Hamalakat Hashemayim Kwarab. Repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call Halayim La La Abanawa Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. Bahasham Racha Hakodash Wamashanala Zakwaim Nawa. Wamalakim Shara Chagadar, which is our praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham, and the name Yahweh Shai delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Zada Baryam, this is Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we'll get verse 64, and it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth, even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." In which, when we go into this word for scatter, it's the Hebrew word pawatazah. All right, and it says, to scatter, be dispersed. It says to scatter, to spread abroad. All right, and this is ultimately why the scriptures say in James 1:1, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. All right, because Jake ultimately is amongst each nation. All right, and that's why Jake looks like the other nations. All right, but their seed line, in fact, goes into Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, and that's the term known as the Israelite foreigners. All right. So it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even with a stone." Because our forefathers was essentially, served the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. All right, and these different captivities that we have been scattered to, Jake has came up in the ways of the heathen. All right, i.e., so-called Christianity, and then Islam. All right, I'm gonna get a quick one real fast. This is let me see. Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 5. All right, and it says, "Behold, ye among the heathen." All right, showing that Jake lives amongst the heathen. All right, in the ancient world, and all right, even present day. It says, "Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told to you." All right, which this ultimately applied in the ancient world. All right, in which that work that was worked ultimately was bringing in the Israelite foreigners. All right, but essentially going back to the point that Jake ultimately is amongst each nation. All right, hence, Revelation 7:9. All right, in which the Gentiles cannot be, the actual Gentiles cannot be saved. All right, the actual Gentiles are not going to take any place, all right, in any promises, all right, because pursuant to Romans the 9th chapter, all right, the promises, the adoption, and so on and so forth is for the elect of the nation of Yasha Allah, all right, and 2/3 to be born back in the kingdom, all right, but ultimately, being that we were scattered, all right, is the term Israelite foreigners. That's where the term Israelite foreigners comes into play, all right. So going back to Deuteronomy 28 and verse 65, and it says, "And among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind." All right, and it says, verse 66, "And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life." So when you go into this word for assurance, all right, it says aman. All right, something that's confirmed, that's established. All right, so when we let's get the scripture again. It says, "And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee." All right, Jake has to worry about in the foods, all right, the lifestyle, of the how the laws are set up in America, Babylon the Great, all right, and the different captivities, all right, that essentially puts Jake, it puts our life to where, it hangs in doubt. There's no assurance of, having a beneficial life or having a good life, all right, or actually, living into the next day, because everything pretty much is set up against us. So it says, "And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life." So ultimately, it's because of the curses. All right, scriptures go into how Esau isn't in trouble like other men. All right, and specifically going into us, Esau, he can live sure in his houses. He can ultimately this is his kingdom. All right, he's at peace. All right, but on the flip side, all right, we have the opposite. All right, going into this part where it says, "And shall have none assurance of thy life." Esau has assurance, of his lifestyle. He doesn't have to worry about, his due to prophecy. He doesn't have to worry about, or he didn't have to worry about in in times past, his kingdom's being stripped from him. All right, and him not having any resources. All right, we're in a time to where the Lord is ultimately doing that role reversal, Deuteronomy 30 and verse 7. All right, but pretty much again, just going to the point that Jake has been scattered. All right, in these different captivities, all right, different places that Jake has been scattered. Essentially, the curses cleave unto Jake. All right, so let's get another one. Let's get and just to go into that, let's get Romans chapter 8 and verse 16, and it says, "The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High." So the Spirit, going back to the scriptures, all right, John 6 and 63, it is the Spirit that quickeneth. The Spirit, the Word, ultimately allows for us to thrive. All right, and we're thriving because the Word puts us in a place to where we're thriving, you see, because we're fearing the Lord. And when we fear the Lord, all right, that equals thriving, success. All right, Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. But it says, it is the Spirit. It says, the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit, the Spirit being the Word, that we are the children of the Most High. All right, again, going back into John 6 and 63, it is the Spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. All right. The ways that was given in captivity, they're not profitable. All right, and that's why we see, Jake, essentially living how Jake lives, which, some Jakes are better off than others, you see, but as a collective, ultimately we're at the bottom, and the curses are essentially upon our people. All right, but it's this word that ultimately allows for us to thrive in the Spirit. All right, it's talking about the word. All right, so going back to this, it says, the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit. All right, the Spirit being the scriptures, all right, is a living testament, is living evidence, essentially, that we are the children of the Most High. All right, that's why it says right here that we are the children of the Most High, you see, because when we read in the scriptures, all right, don't necessarily say Black, Latino, Native American, so on and so forth. All right, it's essentially written, coded. All right, Amos 3 and 7. Surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets. So the prophets ultimately had a vision to understand, all right, that the Spirit, all right, is the evidence, is the black and white, all right, that shows that we're the children of the Lord, you see, because we fit all the curses. All right, we fit everything in the scriptures that said what happened to the nation of Yashar Allah. All right. So let's also get this. Let's get let me see. We get James chapter 1 and verse 1, and it says, James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord Yahweh Shai Hamashayach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. All right, and which is word for scatter. All right, it says diaspora, a scattering. All right, we just got that word for scattering. All right, in Deuteronomy 28th chapter, it went into pawatazah, which means to be scattered, to be spread abroad. It says dispersion of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. All right, so because Jake gets around. All right, again, we was scattered. I'm gonna get this too. This is Isaiah Yashaya chapter 49 and verse 12, and it says, behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. All right, let's get this in the NLT. And it says, see, my people will return from far away, from lands to the north and west, and from as far south as Egypt. So Jake is going to be coming from everywhere, you see. But then it says this word, hold on, let me go back. The word for Sinim goes into, the NLT doesn't have it on point, but Sinim goes into China, because Jake is scattered even in China. All right, right here it says Sinim, and this will be Sayanayam. All right, and it says, a people living at the extremity of the known world may be identified with the inhabitants of southern China, which one of the elders pretty much went into this the other day, but it goes into those that inhabited China. Right here it says the context requires that this must be a very remote country to be sought either in eastern or southern extremities of the world. I understand it to be the land of Ceres or Chinese. So pretty much it goes into China, but Jake is scattered in China. A lot of different martial arts and stuff like that was created in that area. You got the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, a population of Jake's was in the Philippines, so just a lot of Jake is pretty much everywhere, in these different places. Jake is at the top. All right, Jake's at the top. A lot of times, in history, in martial arts history, all right, they'll say where these, great figures, in different martial arts and stuff like that they'll say the heathen acclaim them as their own, but really when you look at history, the heathen, specifically Esau Edom has, covered over the images, all right, and covered over history to tell his story. All right, so essentially, the heathen have done the same thing. Ammon, Moab, they'll take credit, for being these, great figures, so-called great figures, and martial arts history, you see, but really it went back to a Jake. All right. So let me get one more and that'll be it. But this is Romans chapter 9. Well, actually no. Well, yeah, I get that, then I get Revelation. But this is Romans chapter 7 and Romans chapter 9 in verse 1. It says, I say the truth in Hamashayach, I lie not. My conscience also bearing me witness in the Holy Spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart, for I could wish that myself were accursed from Hamashayach, for my brethren and my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants, and the giving of the law and the service of the Most High and the promises, whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Hamashayach came, who is over all, the Most High, blessed forever. Amen. So the promises, all right, the kingdom, all that's, for the nation of Yasharahla, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, and Israelite foreigners, ultimately the Lord is only dealing, with the nation of Yasharahla, Israel, all right, the 12 tribes. So let's also get this. This is Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse 9, and it says, Mine heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. The birds run about are against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. In which the beasts of the field, or excuse me, the birds, talking about the other nations, are essentially, specifically, going into where it says speckled bird. All right, a lot of times, the speckled creatures or the speckled animals will be the last ones chosen. All right, but applying this to us as a people, Jake come looking like in various different shades, all right, and colors, so to speak, because essentially from the scattering. All right, so let's also get this, and I'll go ahead and close. But this is Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9, and a lot of so-called Christians try to use this to circumvent what's already been established. All right, this is Revelation 7 and 9. It says, After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. All right, in which, that great multitude, all right, or, the nations, are those in this group right here. All right, where it says kindreds, all right, the nations, all right, it says a tribe. It says in the New Testament, all persons descending from one of the 12 sons of the patriarch Jacob. All right, so in order to be delivered, all right, one has to be of the elect of the nation of Israel. All right, it can't be, a so-called Christian. It can't be someone in Islam. It can't be, Esau. All right, only those of the lineage, of Yasharahla, the elect of the nation of Yasharahla, will be delivered. I'm gonna get one more. Let me get this. This is let me see. Acts 13 and 26. It says, Men and brethren, children of the stock of Abraham, whosoever among you feareth the Most High, to you is the word of this salvation sent. All right, and ultimately of the stock of Abraham. All right, but we understand that it went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. All right, so those of the nation of Israel, all right, that fear the Lord. All right, who's going to fear the Lord on this side is going to be the elect. All right, that's who the word of salvation is sent to, you see. So it's not going to be a so-called Christian, or it's not going to be Edomites are not going to circumvent themselves into the the covenant. Or they're not going to essentially hide away on a chariot. All right, the word was sent unto the elect of the nation of Yasharahla, and that's who's going to be delivered. So. Just wanted to go into that. I don't want to Zaza Banayapa. Lord's will, that was a beautiful edification to the spirit. Well, I don't want to Za Atam Yashlay Latawab, Lord's will. You have a good night. Wa shalom lakam, which is peace to you all. Shalom, shalom.